Let me tell you something that most podcasters will not say. You do not have to have it all figured out to start your podcast. In fact, the best podcasters I know figure it out as they go, including myself. In this Espresso Shot episode, I'm sharing why clarity comes through action, not overthinking, and how starting messy is actually your biggest advantage. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Okay, I want to go ahead and bust this myth right now. You do not have to have a crystal clear vision for your podcast. I see far too many people have a concept for a podcast, but they don't have the perfect music or the perfect logo or the perfect whatever it is, niche, title, audience. They don't have the full plan, and that holds them back from starting. And the truth is, you don't need all of that to start your podcast. It comes as you go. If you listen to pretty much all of my episodes in the Podcast Cafe, this is what these successful podcasters are talking about. They learn as they go. They learn as the podcast evolves and as their business evolves. So the podcast grows with them. I mean, in your business or in your career, you probably didn't start at what you do now. It's an evolution. So it comes the same with your podcast. Clarity comes through publishing your episodes, not just planning them. Because if you plan it out and get really meticulous with it and you know exactly what to say here and there and you know all the details, and then you do it and it doesn't have the results you want, it's going to be disappointing. So really, it comes through messy action. Testing out this concept, testing out that. I'm testing out this Espresso Shot series right now. It's successful in the launch. But if I planned out every single detail of it without taking action, I wouldn't have known if you all enjoy these Espresso Shot series or if you just wanted longer episodes. But here's the truth. The longer you wait for perfect, the longer you delay connections, credibility, and visibility, all things that podcasting brings. There's a lot of power in pivoting, and it's completely normal to pivot in your podcast. It doesn't mean that you failed. In the next episode with Katie Rip, she's the next guest, she actually tells more about how she pivoted her podcast from telling all stories to telling intentional business support stories from female founders. But that wouldn't have come without her first posting a bunch of interviews or a bunch of solo episodes. Here's the truth. Pivoting means you're listening, growing, and paying attention to what's landing. It does not mean that you failed. So just like Katie's story that you'll hear in the next episode, her shift came through listening to her audience and herself. In a client example, I have a client that just does interview episodes, but she did a solo episode. She's done a few of them in her podcast journey, and they blow up. And I was like, we have to do more solo episodes. We have to get some more in here because that's what people want to hear from you. Now, the pendulum swings, right? Like, don't go all in on solo episodes because your audience still loves the guest episodes. Just sprinkle more of your solo episodes in. That's the pivot that a lot of podcasters need to make. A common thing that I see from a lot of people starting their podcast when they try to be perfect is what they're missing out on by trying to be perfect. They're focusing on being perfect rather than focusing on these other aspects that will actually make a successful podcast. So instead of the perfect workflow or the perfect email template or the perfect social media graphics, why don't you focus on what consistency will look like to you? Why don't you focus on who your audience will be and what guests you can tie in to reinforce what your audience you believe will be interested in. Again, remember, power's in the pivot. So we're just kind of testing things out in these first few phases of the podcast. Yes, have a plan. Do not try to be perfect. Instead of being perfect, focus on connection. Focus on letting people know that your podcast is coming out. Focus on building your online community before your podcast even comes out. Focus on getting those guests, like I said, and focus on nurturing those relationships before the interview, during the interview, after the interview. Your podcast can build a community if you stop trying to be perfect with these things that don't matter so much. And I think this is really common when it comes to podcasting. As the host, you want to be the perfect host. And oftentimes that could come off as not willing to learn from the guest, right? You want to sound like you know it all, when in reality, you should not be trying to sound like the expert 100% of the time. You know, that's why these big podcasters like Joe Rogan, he's so successful because he's not the expert. He learns alongside his, like, he has a learner's mindset. A lot of the best podcasters do. Diary of a CEO, Steven, he does the same thing. Like, he doesn't go in thinking, I'm the host, I'm the one who knows best. No, he's pulling in experts because they know best. He's learning, and his audience will learn from there too. So I think that's really important. Instead of focusing on sounding perfect, focus on just starting this conversation and learning as you go. You're allowed to evolve in your format, your niche, your schedule. You know, if you want to do for a month, for a week, you know, it could be anything you want. Your audience loves growing with you. As long as, instead of being perfect, you're focusing on building the community and relationships with them. I really want you to take away from this episode, I want you to let go of the pressure. You don't have to be the voice for your niche. You just have to be a voice that is willing to grow and stand out as you evolve. Think about your first episodes as kind of like a training ground. They're not the final product. In fact, if you listen to any episodes in the Podcast Cafe, a lot of the guests that I'm having on, they're like, my first episode sucked. And even with my other podcast, Employee to Boss, and the podcast I had way before that, like, you grow. The way I sounded back in 2018 versus the way I sound now in 2025 is completely different. So the first episodes are your training ground. Don't be so hard on yourself. Be nice to yourself and know that this is what will get you to the next step. So I really encourage you to start before you're ready, launch before it's perfect, and refine as you go. Truly, if you're waiting until your podcast feels ready, consider this your sign to start now. You're really doing a disservice to yourself and your audience. You're honestly hurting them by trying to be perfect. In my episode with Kate Perkovic, she waited a few years to start her podcast, and her advice was, I wish I started sooner because this is what my audience needed. And I was depriving them of this. So your audience wants to hear from you. Stop waiting. If you want to hear a real life story of someone who did this, starting with messy action and pivoting as they go, be sure you listen to the next episode with Katie Ripp. Her podcast is called #ActuallyICan, and the episode is just so good. So I hope that this Espresso Shot episode gave you the nudge that you needed to actually start your podcast before it's perfect and you feel ready. And please share this episode with someone who's at the edge of launching but is trying to just have it perfect before they start. As we're talking about testing out new things in our podcast, I'm going to actually start sharing in these Espresso Shot episodes what I'm listening to this week so you could get some ideas on where I'm learning from. Right now, I'm listening to Gary Vee's book called Day Trading Attention. It is so good. I'm listening to it on audiobook, so get it from your library or Audible. I have an Audible link in the show notes, but it is just so good. So that's what I'm listening to, and that's where I'm learning from. All right, I will talk to you soon, and make sure you look out for that episode with Katie. Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind the scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.